Good morning everyone. So I'm Alicia Scotland and I'm part of the youth at YCC, at part of 15 plus at the moment because I'm 17, and I'm just going to be talking about Jacob and Esau and that story in Genesis. So I'm just going to start with the birth in Genesis 25 verse 19 to 26, and I think it just is a very significant start of the story, as it starts with a miracle that comes from God, and then it instantly shows the hostility and division that is part of our human nature. And in verse 23, when there's that jostling between the two brothers in the womb, there's this the Lord speaks to Rebecca, the mother, and says, you have sons in the womb which will become two nations. From the very beginning, the two nations will be rivals. One nation will be stronger than the other will serve the younger. Yeah, I think it's really interesting that God starts giving a miracle to Rebecca, and that she was unable to have children, but God was good and he gave her a miracle. And then instantly with that miracle there was already this tension, there was already this hostility and division within the womb, with the two different nations that were going to be rivals from the beginning of their lives, and that one would be stronger than the other. And there was just this constant conflict between the brothers and between who God is and who we are as humanity. And obviously in that first part of the birth, Jacob is given his name the deceiver through grabbing Esau's heel. And I think it's just that it always starts with God providing a miracle. It always starts with God being generous enough to give life and perform miracles within us, and then that naturally to us causes hostility, and we naturally divide and we naturally oppose the things that God has for us because of our humanity. And that just shows how much greater God is than us. And I think I just love that it starts with the fact that God has a plan. He saw the corruption, he was aware of it, he saw the divisions, and he saw that there was distress from the beginning, but he makes it turn for good. And that all the events were served for a purpose. Even though the story starts and we're already questioning what God's going to do with that, we know that he turns it for good, and he makes good from both of the lives of both Jacob and Esau. The second part that I got was in the selling of the birthright in Genesis 25 verse 27 to 34. Obviously Esau comes from the wilderness after hunting and says to Jacob that he's starving, that he is needing food, and the first thing that Jacob does is try to get his birthright from him and trying to get him to sell it to him. Obviously the significance of the birthright was position and status and inheritance, and this was inheritance of leadership and the role of the father over the family and over the brothers. In this part of the story, Jacob has very little compassion for his brother and is very deceitful, as his name tells us. And also Esau is coming with his need and Jacob is exploiting it. And in this part of the story, obviously Jacob is seen like a very horrible person. He's taking advantage, and this just does reflect our human nature, that Esau was able to give away something that was greater than himself. He was able to satisfy his flesh and remove something that was going to benefit his life, that was going to set the course of his future, and he gave that away to satisfy his own needs. And that also Jacob had very little compassion and was deceitful and decided to take and exploit in that situation. But yeah, that we are humans that can be deceitful, that can be exploiting of others, and this reflects many trends to come from that in the down the line. On Jacob's journey away from home, as he's like fleeing from Esau because Esau wants to kill him from taking his blessing and his birthright, we can see that Jacob's journey is a tough one, and he is displaced from his home. He's displaced from everything that he knew because he was fleeing from his brother. And in that journey, through a situation that he was having to flee, in a situation where he was being separated from his family, from everything that he knew, that God was there with him. God promised him and encountered him saying that he would provide the land under his feet, saying that he would provide a way for his descendants and that they would be numerous as the dust on the earth, and that all families would be blessed from him. And I struggled with this part of like the amount of blessings that Jacob did have, because I always see Jacob as a very, negative character, and he doesn't seem like he should deserve these blessings because of the deceit that he has for his brother, for the actions that he has. But God still had a plan for him, and like God knows the corruption of our hearts. God knows that we aren't perfect and that human nature is divided, and it always will be, but God still pursues us, and he doesn't care about the things that we've done and who we are, but he cares about the way that he's going to be able to use us for our journey. And no matter what Jacob did in his past, God was going to bless him, and God was going to give him descendants, and he was going to give him provision, and he was going to give him the ability to be cared for and strengthened in everything he did. And that I think it's really important to remember that no matter where we've come from, no matter what nature is of our hearts, no matter the deceit that's there, the exploitation that's there, the corruption that's there, that's just part of who we are as humans, that's just part of humanity, and it's all around us, that God can still use us in our journey, that he's got enough grace to forgive us for whatever he's done, for whatever we've done, and he has enough grace to continue our futures, to continue to bless us and provide for us and keep us safe. I think it's important to remember as well that Jacob didn't get off easy. It seems like Jacob was a deceiver, and he did the wrong out of the brothers, and he didn't deserve God's blessings, and then he got the blessings, and then he got everything given to him, whereas Esau seemed to have gotten nothing from it. But Jacob does have to deal with those consequences. He has to be displaced from his home. He has to be taken away from everything that he's known, and he lives in fear. Further on in Genesis, we see that he has an encounter where he has the ability to face his brother, and he is fearful, and he doesn't know what to do, and he kind of freaks out, and he feels like he's going to be killed. He feels like he's going to be harmed, and he has to live with that fear, whereas Esau is probably knowing that he is greater, knowing that he's stronger, knowing that he has the ability to do that. But when they have this encounter, when he faces up to his mistakes, when Jacob faces up to the things that he's done wrong and the corruption that he's caused, he is met with a brother who loves him and who embraces him and who decides to put all the things to the past, and they have this beautiful moment where they are connecting and they are rejoining together. And I think even though Jacob seems to have gotten all the blessings from God, he seems to have this moment where he's in the house of God. He is with Bethel, and he sees this image of the stairway between heaven and earth. He still does live in fear, and he's still on this journey of fear, even though he is free, and even though he has God by his side, he's still living in fear. I think even though there's a lot of questions in this story of why did God choose Jacob, why did he choose to bless him, why did he create that division from the start, because God could have easily just made them get along and made everything start with the holiness that he intended for it. But God was persistent in the journey, and God created the journey. And I questioned the story quite a bit, but actually it does reflect us and God each and every day. Like, we are always falling short of God, we are always falling into sin every day, we are always needing to be forgiven again and again and again. And even though our actions may not have been to the standard of Jacob's, we still are falling away from God every single day, and he still has enough grace to have a journey for us and have a story for us. And we can hold on to the fact that no matter what we have done, if we are willing to let God into our lives, if we're willing to let God into our journeys, whatever they may look like, that he will provide and he will make a way for us. And we see this later in the story that Jacob has to return back to Bethel. He has to return back to where he met God with a dream, and he asks his family to purify themselves because God's promises were fulfilled in his journey, because he looks back and he sees that God did protect him, that God was with him wherever he was, and that God's promises did remain in his story. We can see that God was eager to love him, and was eager to answer his prayers. In anything that Jacob presented to God, he was able to be communicative to that. He was able to respond to Jacob. So I think that we can learn that God does remain with us. He walks beside us, he gives us blessings, and he gives us his grace, and that he has a grace that renews again and again and again. And no matter how much we fall short of him, no matter how much our story seems unredeemable, our story seems like it's not going to have purpose to it, that God does want that for us, and he wants that life for us. So yeah, I just want to pray that, Father, I just pray that everybody that listens to this talk has a reminder of who you are, of a reminder of how big your grace is for us, a reminder of how great your love is for us, and that we don't have to be ready, we don't have to be made up of the things that you can work within us, but we can give our lives to you for you to work things for good, for you to use us and guide us through our journeys with you, and that you are able to make great things come from nothingness, great things come from brokenness, and we just pray that we are able to be servants of you and walk with you and have encounters with you and feel your presence and your provision over our lives every step of the way, no matter who we are, where we've come from, the mistakes that we've made, the bitterness or brokenness of our hearts, that you are able to work things for good, and your grace is so much greater than who we are. Amen.